Hello everyone. So, as you may have seen if you follow me at Lean Blake Podcaster on Instagram, you will have found that I am doing something special with this episode and from now on, and that is that I'm going to move from fully scripted to semi-scripted episodes. That basically means the opening and closing will be scripted, but the rest of it I will have the information and I will just speak it the way I should speak it. That being said, let's get into the Flanagan episode. The name Flanagan is one of those surnames you've met 100 times. But when you look beneath the surface, you find yourself standing in the middle of old Ireland. It comes from Flanagans, the line of the red or ruddy one. A simple idea that somehow carried whole families, rival clans and royal households. And what looks like a single name is, in truth, several histories running like a river beside each other, stretching from Roscommon to Fermanagh, Offaly, Waterford and far beyond. If you ever wondered where did the surname Flanagan come from, basically it's from Flan, meaning red or ruddy, and again or Egon, which is a version of Ian, which is denoting kind of a small person or a small thing. So it's descendants of the little red complexioned man or little ruddy man, or that kind of thing. Now, in medieval or late medieval Ireland, when this name would have popped up in English sensibilities, you wouldn't have had people who knew how to spell it or write it down in English. So that meant you ended up with loads of different variants of the name, like Flanagan, Flanigan, Flanagan, Flannaghan, and even Flanagan, which is Flaniken, which I had not heard of or seen before researching for this episode. Some of them, even some of the families, have kept the prefix O, so like son of, to be O Flanagan, which is something you'll see the odd time. But it's funny, I said in the introduction about the different areas, Roscommon, Offaly, Waterford and all that. Well, the Reverend Patrick Wolfe, who was big into names, realised in his research in the 19th century, so the 1800s, that there was actually 5 different Flanagan families. Then they're all independent. Roscommon, Fermanagh, Westmeath, Eli O'Carroll, which is kind of the Offaly area, and the Waterford area, all had separate Flanagan families. In each of these, someone obviously one day saw one of their leaders and was like, oh, he's the little red one, and it became O'Flanagan or O'Flanagan. But I think we should kind of start with the most famous of them, which is the Roscommon sept, or the Roscommon Flanagans. And they were actually of the same sept or sect as the O'Connors. So this gets interesting when we get to the family crest in a bit, but basically they were O'Connors who someone thought, oh, they're kind of red, or the little ready one. So they became O'Flanagan. Then they were very important actually because they were themselves hereditary stewards, or kind of in the employ, I suppose, of the kings of Connacht, and also were chiefs of a district called Clowncahill, which was a territory that usually throughout the years, stretched between Mantua and Elphin. Elphin is in County Roscommon. Donogh O'Flanagan, who died in 1308, became Bishop of Elphin, and he was one of the first to combine both kind of secular rule and spiritual influence. Then we'll go up a bit, up north to Fermanagh and Ulster more generally. This actually ends up coming a bit more down south because it flies into Mayo a little bit. And the Fermanagh Flanagans were a branch of the Oriala, who were chiefs of Tuaraha and claimed descent from a guy we've heard before, Carbra, who was the son of Niall of the Nine Hostages, who was the guy who kidnapped St. Patrick. And their ancestral seat was a place called Ballyflanagan, which is now called Achamore, near a place called Maharaboy currently. And if you're a Flanagan listening to this from kind of the Ulster area, or maybe even, as I said, County Mayo, you might well be one of these Flanagans. Come back down south again and we get to the Midlands of Westmeath and Offaly. And these Flanagans derived from lords of Comer and at times held sway over all of a region called Teffia. The Eli O'Carroll branch, and remember Eli O'Carroll is kind of the Westmeath and Offaly sort of area, were chiefs of a place called Kinnail Arga, which is roughly the barony of Ballybrit, or the area of Ballybrit today. And they claimed descent through the Heber line of Irish kings. So the Irish kings came through two separate lines. And if you want, I can do a episode into that. Just comment on my Instagram or message me. And finally, we get to the one and the only Waterford Flanagans. And these guys were basically chiefs of the barony of what became the barony of Upper Third, and were part of the Éile or Eli tribe, which is very interesting to me because the area around where I am used to be called Eli Ogerty. That it comes from Eli or Éile Ogerty, but they didn't last very long because the Normans came in the Anglo-Norman invasion, and the Power family, which is I think the Puer is how you pronounce their name originally, came in and basically kicked them out and said, no, we're not having you. So yeah, that was the end of the short-lived Waterford branch of the Flanagans. Now, I said I would come back to the crest, and I will, and now right now come back to the crest. So the crest is an oak on a white background. The white background is a symbol of antiquity, strength, peace, and sincerity. The green in the oak tree itself represents hope, joy, and loyalty. And the oak itself is very interesting because the oak is on the O'Connor's tree, but the oak on the Flanagan's crest is a little bit smaller, just to be different from the O'Connor's crest. Every family has a motto, and the Flanagan motto for the majority of the Flanagan families anyway is Certavi et vici, I have fought and conquered. Not I will conquer you someday. No, I have fought and conquered. And this shows the resilience that shines through all stories from back. Okay, the Waterford family didn't do it great, but back through all the different battles that they had in the Middle Ages and beforehand and afterhand, up until even the next section that I'm about to go into, which is when they emigrated. And speaking of emigration, early North American records show that brothers called Anto and Andrew Flanagan arrived in Virginia in 1705. The name pops up again in 1793 when Robert Flanagan was convicted in Armagh and was transported to New South Wales, Australia, aboard a boat called the Boddingtons. In both these cases, you could say that the motto kind of takes on a new meaning. The fight was, in this case, survival, and the conquest in this case was just establishing a new life. During the Great Famine of the 1840s and early 50s, many Flanagans left Ireland for North America, Australia, and beyond. If you ever wondered to yourself, I don't hear too many Flanagans around the place. Well, it is the 69th most common surname in Ireland, so it's not all that common. But it is found worldwide, and unsurprisingly enough, massively in America, where at the last count there was 42,961 Flanagans. Speaking of particular Flanagans, we have John Flanagan, who was born in Limerick in 1873 and moved to America, where he took up the hammer throw, which is a sport. If you don't know it, look it up. Basically, they fling this metal ball as far as they can on a metal chain, and he anyway became Olympic champion for the US, unfortunately not for Ireland, 3 times in 1900, 1904, and 1908. Then you've Father Michael Flanagan. Actually, the next two are very interesting because you've Father Michael Flanagan, who was a Roscommon native and became deeply involved in Irish political life, and particularly Sinn Féin, right at the moment where Irish independence kind of was a question. And he was massively into Republican ideals and national self-determination. But then, on literally the exact flip side, you have Sir Ronnie Flanagan, who served as the final Chief Constable of the RUC, or Royal Ulster Constabulary, and the first Chief Constable of the PSNI, or Police Service of Northern Ireland. So there, it's really interesting there because you have the two sides of the coin flip. And even one of the defining accounts of Pearl Harbor comes from Guy S. Flanagan Jr., who was an ensign aboard the USS Arizona, which is one of the ships that was struck, but he survived. And if you've ever thought to yourself, you know what, I'd like to go to a pub to drink to my own surname of Flanagan, if that is your surname, or my Flanagan ancestors, then if you're in Ireland, you can go to Flanagan's Mill and Lock 13 Craft Beer House in Sallins, County Kildare, or, if you're more up the west, Flanagans in Claremorris, County Mayo. I just want to make it clear that I was not sponsored by either of those pubs or anything like that. I don't even drink myself. I just thought it was an interesting kind of funny thing to add in at the end. So really, from a nickname for a ruddy-faced man to branches of chiefs, stewards, emigrants, writers, and even local landmarks, the name Flanagan, you could say, carries a quiet, enduring pride, the kind that still echoes in the old motto, Certavi et vici, I have fought and conquered. If you like this semi-scripted way of doing things, which I am very bad at, and I promise I will improve, tell me, either in the comments. If you are on Spotify, you can comment. If you are on Instagram, you can comment at Liam Blake Podcaster. And yeah, let me know what else you would like to see. By the way, if you're wondering, this is actually a request from an American woman who wanted to see her name featured. So yeah, goodbye and thanks for listening.